My dear friends, good evening. And I thank Professor Panagaria for having given me this opportunity to address you. I start a bit hesitatingly because I was informed or I was advised I deliver a speech, read out a speech. I had a bit of a difficulty with that because you're trained to speak. And as a spokesperson, you're trained to speak, not read out. But I wasn't sure about the protocol here, so I've been given a speech, which of course I will do as per protocol, read it out. But post that, I suppose there will be a slot where I can freely exchange my thoughts as you would ask questions, I suppose. So
Absolutely.
with that understanding, I wish to say I feel honored to address this gathering. And rightly, Professor Panagaria has reminded me of my mentor, Sri Arun Jaitley, who every time after a visit from the US would call a few of us and give us a very descriptive, he had a very endearing way of talking. He would tell us what the experience was like, the interaction in the universities, the exchanges in the think tanks, and would come back to say, each one of us should be doing that. We would hesitatingly say, yes, of course, but we can't reach the kind of level you can reach. But that used to be his standard. Listen and then go back, but do address students. So today I'm extremely glad that Professor Panagadia has given me the opportunity to address you. But I'm a bit nervous because I have Professor Jagdish Bhagwati sitting before me, who from my student days, I've really had the fortune of reading his works. Just a bit of correction. My PhD thesis was from JNU, but not under Krishna Bharadwaj. Krishna Bharadwaj, I did a paper under her. She was one of those exemplary professors who blended a lot of things in her teaching, thereby making it all memorable. She would have her lectures after school hours at home. I was just telling Professor Bhagwati, at home, she would be busy cooking to serve all of us. But even as that goes on, she would also get into she was a trained Hindustani classical musician. So she would sing. And after that, also teach us a bit of value in economics. And then food was served. So it was one of those kind of occasions for a person who's come from the south to have a teacher do that. But she had a flair of her own. So I didn't do my PhD under her. I did a paper in 2 semesters, and after that moved over to the School of International Studies, where I did my international trade PhD, which I didn't go back to defend because by which time I was in London. So that's a short beginning. So I feel very honored to address this gathering in this institution of great eminence. While I propose to share my thoughts about the Indian economy, I keenly look forward to an interaction with all of you over the next hour or so. In 2014, when National Democratic Alliance, the NDA, was voted to power by the world's largest democracy, India was $1.7 trillion US economy. In 2019, India has become a US $2.7 trillion economy, having added $1 trillion US in the last 5 years. Our vision to become a $5 trillion US economy by 2024-25 is challenging, but it is realizable. Realization of our goal is not fraught in uncertainty, but it is connected to our single-minded dedication to reforms, the evidence of which is there for the world to see. To become a $5 trillion economy, India's GDP needs to go faster than what we grew at an average of 7.5% in the last 5 years. That's a matter of fact statement. Inflation needs to be at 4% to ensure commensurate increase in purchasing power. Our inflation in the last 5 years was 4.5% and has been on a declining path to reach 3.4% in 2018-19. Fixed investment rate needs to increase from 29% to 36% in the course of next 5 years, with some depreciation of the rupee. We are well and truly on our way to becoming a $5 trillion economy by 2024-25. A $5 trillion economy will make India a global economic powerhouse, moving us from 7th to 3rd position in terms of current US dollar exchange rate. However, our ambition to become economically strong has been driven more by our desire to become a less poorer nation. The poverty headcount ratio declines with high growth, as has been seen in India as well. Poverty headcount ratio in 2011 measured 21.2% of India's population, earning less than 1.90 per day of US dollars. World Bank has estimated the level in 1920 at 7% and will further decline to 4.6% of the population by the year 2022. This means that in a decade, we have lifted 168 million people of a poverty out of actual poverty, which I think is a fitting tribute to Mahatma Gandhi, who dreamt of ridding the country of this scourge. In an emerging economy poised for higher growth, some increase in income inequality is inevitable. India is no exception to this trend. In July 2019, I presented my first budget of Government of India under Modi 2.0. At that time, India's GDP had decelerated in 4 consecutive quarters. Yet we projected the GDP to grow at 7% in 2019-20, slightly higher than the 6.8% realized in 2018-19. Even when our GDP decelerated in the 5th successive quarter, we did not revise downwards our projections, as some institutions around the world have already done. Several times I have been queried on the revised growth estimate of the economy. I want to take this opportunity to set the government's record straight on the growth rate or the growth math itself. Friends, we have just entered the second half of 2019-20 and already implemented a series of reforms, with more on the anvil before the close of the year. The reforms were and will be guided by close scrutiny of growth evidence in the economy. Our vision to become a $5 trillion economy in 2024-25 remains unchanged and further strengthened by our resolve to deliver on the resounding mandate given to us by the largest electorate in the world. The IMF has projected a growth at 6.1% for the year 1920, with the world growth revised downwards to being at 3.2%. We continue to remain one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Friends, our growth and the growth story is not a hostage to performance in some quarters alone. As a big member of the G20 group of countries, we have already entered the big league on the strength of our economic performance and vibrant democracy. I believe that a strong growth story such as ours can only be sustained on foundations of a strong macroeconomic stability. Therefore, despite all odds, we have continued our journey of sticking to a glide path for fiscal deficit enumerated in my budget speech. The year would end with central government debt of 48% of GDP, down 2%, actually down 2 percentage from the level of 2013-14. This is evident in low yields in the bond market and would leave enough space for private investments. Gross FDI flows into the country during April-July was about 27.3 billion US dollars, up from 21.1 billion US dollars witnessed during corresponding period of the last year. Total FDI of 284 billion US dollars bears witness to the confidence of the world to strong macroeconomic fundamentals of our economy. The growth impulses in the economy have been buffeted by the winds of trade wars, protectionism, and volatility in crude prices, as well as in crude supplies that the world is witnessing. However, that hasn't deterred us from continuing the path of structural reforms in the economy. The banking system saw an irrational exuberance of credit expansion during 2004 and 2009. This led to a huge distortion on the banking system. As soon as the NDA government came to power, we set about the task of repairing the financial system of the country. Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code was introduced to quickly resolve the stressed assets of the banks. Between December 2016 and June 2019, 2,162 corporate insolvency resolution processes have been admitted and are at various stages of resolution. NPAs in the bank were recognized, provisioning made, and full program of recapitalization was carried on. During this year as well, a part of the budget was committed to the recapitalization of the public sector banks, which has recently been subjected to mergers and reforms in senior appointments for improving governance. In July 2019, government decided to infuse about 10 billion US dollars into public sector banks to enable release of about 75 billion US dollars liquidity into the market. Additional liquidity in the form of liquidity support to NBFCs to the tune of about 3 billion US dollars has also been planned. Investment by foreign portfolio investors has been encouraged through the required changes in the tax regime. In addition to the financial sector reforms, we have started the process of reducing the cost of capital for increasing the investment rate of the private sector. The Reserve Bank of India has cut the policy rate by 135 basis points since February 2019 and further guided the banks to link their lending rates to external benchmarks, including policy rate, to improve transmission. We have recently cut our basic corporate tax rate from 30% to 22% and further to 15% for companies incorporated after 1st October 2019. This is intended to improve profitability of companies, inducing them to increase their investment. We are expecting that improved compliance in the form of companies choosing to give up on tax exemptions will neutralize some revenue loss, while the rest of the shortfall will be met by disinvestment proceeds. To further boost investment, we have liberalized the FDI regulations to enable greater participation of foreign investors in the coal market, allowing contract manufacturing to reflect as self-manufacturing activity by foreign investors in the country, and increasing ease of doing business for foreign retailers as well. An export package has been announced for easing doing business by exporters, cutting their costs and imparting them greater visibility in the global market. To boost rural incomes and thus consumption in the economy, income support to farmers has been extended. Voluntary pension scheme for retail traders and shopkeepers has been introduced as social support, which will induce consumption through enhanced wealth effect. India has a population of over 1.3 billion. That lends a huge expanse to the coverage of beneficiaries under various development programs of the government. The sheer scale of the programs is unparalleled in the world, making such interventions a gigantic challenge for the government. Direct benefit transfer underpin our flagship programs. This has brought transparency, improved outcomes, and contained diversion of funds. Use of Aadhaar has helped use of technology in DBT. Specifically on rural infrastructure, under the Saubhagya Yojana, the government has achieved 100% electrification of all villages in the country. Under the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, construction of rural roads has been tripled. More than 1,43,000 habitations out of a total of 1,58,000 has been sanctioned habitations have already been connected with Pakka roads. Swachh Bharat Mission is the largest cleanliness drive as well as an attempt to effect behavioral change in the world ever. Even 67 years after India's independence, in 2014, around 100 million rural and about 10 million urban households in India were without a sanitary toilet. Over 564 million, that is close to half of the population, still practiced open defecation. Since October 2014, over 100 million toilets have been built all over the country and 599,963 villages have been declared open defecation free. Housing for all is a pet scheme of the Prime Minister. Under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, the government aims to provide affordable housing for the poor with a target of building about 20 million affordable houses by end of March 2022. During that period, 2014 to 18, a total number of 15.3 million houses have been built. Under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana urban alone, the cumulative number of houses sanctioned is 8.5 million. Construction of another 140,134 houses is underway. Financial inclusion, as all of you all know, is one of the major schemes of this government. The government launched this main flagship scheme to promote financial inclusion and provide financial security to empower the poor and the unbanked in the country. On 2nd October 2019, just gone, there are 371.9 million active accounts in public and private sector banks combined. Of this, more than 53% accounts are being held by women beneficiaries. Their accounts hold 10 billion US dollars today. 10 billion US dollars. And I do remember, because I was part of that ministry, finance ministry even then, when we started it, the Prime Minister was heckled for starting a scheme for zero balance accounts, saying the banks will spend too much money servicing them, but they would have no balance in their accounts. But today, those very accounts hold 10 billion US dollars all put together. PM Kisan is a central scheme under which direct income support is being provided to all farmers, irrespective of the size of their land holdings, at the rate of 6,000 rupees per year. This scheme will extend coverage to 145 million beneficiaries. As on 13th October 2019, a total of 74.5 million small and marginal farmers have benefited from the scheme. Initiatives only micro irrigation have not only helped in conservation of water. Initiatives such as micro-irrigation have not only helped in conservation of water, they have improved productivity and have permitted farmers to experiment with more remunerative crops. While improving minimum support price is an important step in a demand side intervention, government is also contemplating more market driven initiatives to give price signals to farmers to plan his crops sufficiently in advance. Disinvestment. The government has been following an active policy on disinvestment in CPSEs through various modes and has made provision to enable the CPSEs, that is the central public sector enterprises, to improve their balance sheet, reduce their debts, and to meet part of the capex requirements. A sum of 850 billion rupees was raised through the CPSE disinvestment in 2018-19. An enhanced target of 1,050 billion rupees disinvestment receipts have been set for the financial year 2019-20. Disinvestment in 25 public sector enterprises is underway to facilitate creation of fiscal space and improve the efficient allocation of public resources. In order to remove complexity and complex intrinsic in many labor laws at the central and state levels, a new labor legislation has recently been passed by the Parliament. As regards universal health coverage, I'm sure all of you are familiar with the Ayushman Bharat scheme. There have been noteworthy strides over the past 2 decades in the quality health care delivered to citizens and population and also of health outcomes. Through the Ayushman Bharat program, announced in the Union Budget of 2018, probably the world's largest government-funded healthcare program, the Government of India has embarked on a path-breaking journey to ensure the affordability and accessibility of healthcare to all Indians. The scheme aims to cover 107.4 million families at the bottom of 2 quintiles with 5 lakh rupees cover each year for secondary and tertiary care hospitals. As on 23rd July 2019, 16,039 hospitals, 8,000 private hospitals and 7,980 public sector hospitals have been empaneled for this purpose under the scheme. More than 5 million beneficiaries have been treated in more than 18,000 empaneled hospitals. Nutrition. India can leverage its demographic dividend only if its citizens attain optimum levels of health, nutrition, and cognition. Recognizing this, the government launched the Poshan Abhiyan in March 2018 to provide policy and programmatic guidance to high burden states and districts, facilitate multi-sectoral planning, catalyze resource mobilization, and develop a surveillance system of nutrition. Friends, before I conclude, let me reiterate our confidence in achieving the $5 trillion economy objective in the next 5 years, with considerable reduction in poverty and manageable levels of income inequalities. A critical component of our vision is high levels of investment driven by the private sector, a larger presence in the global markets, and a lower level of public debt. The growth path that our leader, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, has set, and we believe it is the one we will deliver to the people of India. Thank you very much.